What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to the 17th Take, a project brought to you by the Community College of Philadelphia's Communication and Media Studies program and CCP TV studio. I'm your host, Richard Robinson, and we're coming together to dig into the stories, experiences, and issues at the heart of Philadelphia from 17th and Spring Garden. Today, we'll focus our discussion on something that all of us here at CCP are pretty familiar with, community college. More specifically, we'll be focusing on why community college matter, what challenges they're facing, and how students can thrive in this system. Let's get straight into it. The history of community colleges dates back to the early 20th century and part of the late 19th century. This was when the concept was first born. Four-year universities were thriving at the time, but the University of Chicago president William Rainey Harper advocated for more affordable institutions where others didn't like gen ed classes being until junior year because they wanted more focused and catered studies. Hence why the first community college, Joliet Junior College, was founded in 1901 in Joliet, Illinois. Community colleges have since become a vital part of higher education, and they're currently being underfunded on a national scale. Research from across the country shows that community colleges have received $9,000 less per student historically than four-year institutions. And community colleges get a significant portion of their money from federal, state, and local governments. But the House Budget Committee proposed that there have been $330 billion in cuts since the new administration has taken over. So, higher education is at risk, and states have implemented further budget cuts that make it even harder for these schools to stay afloat. There are thousands of community colleges in the United States, but I think it would be helpful to start our discussion right here at CCP. CCP is the largest public institution for higher education in Philadelphia, serving more than 19,000 students every year. They offer more than 100 degree and certificate programs, which opens up the door to so many different industries. Community college, just like four-year college, is a gateway to success. And it also serves as a lifeline for people who might not have had access to a four-year college right away. People come here to learn the skills of being nurses, accountants, software engineers, journalists, and many of us here can speak to this, including one of our very own cast members in the studio today. Welcome, Will.
Thanks, Richard, and hey, everybody. As a non-traditional student myself, I feel like CCP has kind of provided me with a second chance. I initially graduated high school in 2014, and I went on to attend a four-year state college. This decision wasn't really that informed, but it just felt like what I had to do, and I didn't know that I had any other options because I hadn't had a lot of people in my family go to college before me. So I spent my first 2 years there kind of struggling, getting acclimated to the culture there, getting myself in some trouble, and then eventually I ended up failing out. I had to take responsibility for the fact that I didn't put my best foot forward as far as my education and my academics went. But I realized looking back that that place didn't really cultivate a collaborative learning environment, and I didn't really have the resources that I needed that were particularly catered to my needs. So after that, I made a brief stop here at CCP back in 2017. I was really traumatized and embarrassed at the thought of being back in the classroom again. But once I got started, the staff here and the teachers here really made me feel seen and really made me feel supported. After that, I took another break, and then I spent really the last 4 years after COVID working a bunch of different jobs, telling myself I was going to go back to school. And then last fall, I finally decided to come back, and it was definitely worth it. In the past year, I've been able to get 2 different internships. I've been able to meet with a lot of established media professionals, and I've built like a lot of valuable friendships with other students here. From the outside looking in, a lot of people in my life, or a lot of people that I've crossed paths with, probably would think that it wasn't worth it for me to come back to school after failing the first 2 times. But community colleges are really built for making sure that education is accessible for people no matter what your circumstances are. Whether you're a single parent trying to balance working classes, or you're a high school grad saving up before transferring, community college really meets you where you are.
100%. And there's so many different types of people that are looking for opportunities here. At the end of the day, CCP alum, they contribute directly to Philadelphia's economy because some of the doctors and scientists of today were the community college students of yesterday. So really the question is, how do we make sure that community colleges are able to thrive?
Yeah, so the first thing is really visibility. I think we need to make it clear that there are like millions of students, especially like according to the Department of Education, trying to get an education and get a degree. The lack of support that comes from this lack of visibility really affects all of those people, the mathematicians and scientists of tomorrow that you're talking about. And secondly, we need to invest more into these schools. Community colleges need consistent funding and support to operate effectively. That could be from the state and federal programs, that can be from local employers, or it can come from city partnerships.
And the stronger those partnerships are, the more career pipelines open to students. It's about making sure that students have access to resources. Here at CCP, we have resources like Career Connections, where professionals will offer career advice or just help you workshop your resume or prepare for an interview. We have dual admissions, which allow students to transfer from this fine college we have here to other colleges and universities. So, really, programs here are designed to help students transition from this stage to whatever stage is next for them, whatever that may be. And that's a very beautiful thing, not just about this specific community college, but community colleges in general.
Yeah, and that's true, but I think it really goes beyond just funding. I think it's about respect at the end of the day. We really got to respect these institutions the same way we would respect four-year colleges. Community college can be a first choice and not just a fallback. I kind of wish I would have known that back in the day, but it worked out for me either way. I think the sooner that we get rid of like that negative connotation and that stigma surrounding community colleges, the sooner that people can see the value in it. I think a lot of people still think of community colleges like less than or other, but the truth is a lot of students get to start here, transfer to amazing universities, and graduate with a lot less debt. One of the most undervalued aspects of community college is the learning environment. We have smaller classes, we have much more supportive professors, and we're able to build real connections with each other. Honestly, it's really a smart move as opposed to a step down.
It really is. And there's so much talent here that it makes it really easy to network and to meet new people. It's a shame that community colleges are so misunderstood, which is why I'm glad that we were able to invite a senior research assistant from the Community College Research Center to come and speak with us today. So it's my pleasure to introduce Selena Cho from CCRC. The Community College Research Center is an independent organization based in New York City that strives to explore the potential of community colleges and improve educational equity through their studies. Today, we have one of their senior research assistants, Selena Cho. And Selena, can you please introduce yourself and give a little bit of background about your history with the organization?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me and for that introduction. My name is Selena Cho, and I'm a researcher at the Community College Research Center. I've been at the center for about 5 years, so just since the pandemic. That's actually when I myself graduated college, and I'd always been interested in education policy and education policy research, which led me to CCRC. I also, during the time that I've been working at CCRC, have also worked on a master's degree in education policy as well. So really like education policy and policy research has always been my thing. It's what I've studied. It's what I work in now. So it's a pleasure to be here and share what I've learned with you all.
So it seems that you do have pretty extensive knowledge of community colleges with how long you've been working with CCRC. So the first thing that I want to ask you is, how do you think that attending community college can benefit students in the long term?
Oh, wow. I mean, there are so many benefits that we can talk about. I think the first thing that comes to a lot of people's minds is that community colleges do offer a more affordable and shorter term option for students who, are juggling family or work responsibilities and really don't feel too sure if they can be full-time students for 4 years for a bachelor's degree, right? So the time piece, and everyone says time is money. So there's the money piece, there's the time piece. And then in addition to that, there's the fact that community colleges offer so many different types of programs. So I always tell people when I share about my work, the thing that is most impressive to me about community colleges is the way that they wear so many different hats. They do everything from dual enrollment for high school students to, certificate programs, certifications for workforce, to associate's degrees, to transfer. They just do so much, to adult ed, continuing ed. So regardless of what a student is looking for, there's bound to be something at the community college that will serve that need. So I think those are probably some of the main benefits. And one more I'll add is, over my time working with community colleges, I've really learned that the community in community colleges is very intentional, that it's, these colleges are called that for a reason, right? So these are folks who live and work in the community. These colleges are so in tune with the needs of the community, labor market needs, employer needs. So I think all of those things are benefits that would draw students to a community college.
Hmm. And you spoke on some interesting topics about the programs that we have at community colleges as well, because that's something we actually did discuss earlier in the episode. So fascinating. I also wanted to ask you how your research changed your perspective on community college. Is there anything that changed how you look at community college? So something that really shocked you when you discovered it?
Hmm. That's a great question. I think that to folks who don't know as much about community colleges, on the surface, sometimes when you see statistics, they can be very discouraging, right? So sometimes we see statistics about like completion rates being really low or graduation rates being really low, attendance being low, term to term persistence being low. And a lot of the statistics can get really, really discouraging. But I think that what I've learned over my time as a qualitative researcher at the Community College Research Center is that when you get into why those numbers might look the way they look, on one hand, I've learned so much about how complex the lives of community college students are, right? Like I said before, a community college student can be a 17-year-old in high school. They could also be like a 67-year-old. They could also be a 37-year-old with kids. There's just so many stories captured in a community college student body. So that's something I've really learned more about through my research that has inspired me and changed the way that I view community colleges. And then on the flip side, again, the statistics sometimes paint a really discouraging picture, but I think a lot of people don't realize the tremendous, colossal task that community colleges have in, again, providing these different programs and services to so many different types of students with so many different types of needs and life circumstances, often with very little funding and very little support and resources to do what they do. So I think just having the student side of the story and the institutional side of the story, for me, has really added a lot more context and a lot more color to kind of explain sometimes why the statistics on the surface might look a little discouraging.
Yeah, it's crazy how much that the student body can vary. You know, you spoke to where you can be a 17-year-old in college or a 67-year-old still going to school, just
Mhm.
pursuing further education or getting another degree, which I think is really amazing and it really brings character to community colleges. And I also wanted to talk about something that you mentioned, the lack of funding toward a lot of community colleges. How can that lack of funding hinder certain colleges or certain schools from supporting students?
I think the immediate example that comes to mind is with advising. Advising at community colleges is so underfunded, which leads to understaffing. And that means that there aren't enough advisors to serve the students well, which means every single advisor has a caseload of hundreds and hundreds of students. And it's so hard to do advising work well when you have such high caseloads. So that's an area we hear about all the time at the Community College Research Center as being an area of colleges that always need more support, more staff, more money, more resources. So obviously, understaffed advising has direct implications for student experience. A lot of our research at CCRC emphasizes the fact that for students, and particularly students who come from historically marginalized backgrounds or non-traditional students, relationships matter. Relationships might be the most important thing that keeps students coming back term after term and keeps students on track toward completing their programs. And so again, advisors can play such a big role in that interpersonal relationship piece, just in terms of giving every single student a name and a face at the college apart from their professors that they can go to. So that's the first example, the biggest example that comes to mind for how lack of funding can impact student experience.
Yeah, having connections with faculty is actually a very important part of community college, hence the community. And with not that many professors being able to be hired and work for the students, that will definitely have a negative effect on student performance. So, I have a question about the negative stigma surrounding community college. A lot of people seem to think that community college is less than. So I wanted to ask, what negative perceptions of community college do you think are misguided? What misconceptions about community college have you encountered?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that a lot of the time community colleges get this bad rap as just like a continuation of high school. Um, which, in my time at CCRC, I've learned definitely is not the case. Community colleges have some of the most talented and motivated instructors that I have had the pleasure to meet who oftentimes come from industry, right? These folks often work for decades in their field and then come to teach what they have learned in community college. So some very talented instructors. I also think that in comparison to four-year institutions where faculty members might face more of a pressure to have to publish, do research, for their own like academic careers. At community college, the folks who are teaching there are there purely because they want to teach. They want to teach and they love teaching. And there's no research or grant making or just other things they have to do. So they're really folks who enjoy teaching. So I think that the faculty members that I have interviewed over the last 5 years, and there have been hundreds that I have spoken to over the last 5 years, they really are very thoughtful about how they craft their courses. So I guess that's like one misperception. I think that sometimes community colleges get that reputation as continuation of college because there used to be these intro English, intro math course sequences that were sometimes really, really long and didn't let students earn credit. And those were courses designed to help students who were not placing as college ready via placement scores or test scores or what have you, just to be able to catch up. But even that piece, community colleges across the country over the last nearly 20 years now have been working on reforming those introductory course sequences so that students can enter at the college level sooner. Um, I also think that the continuation of high school myth is being a little busted by the proliferation we see across the country of transfer agreements between four-year institutions and two-year institutions. Many different states and systems have system-wide or statewide transfer agreements in place now to help more students, move through community college and enter bachelor's degree granting institutions with sophomore or junior standing, which is great. So that's one misperception. I think the other misperception is like sometimes with that continuation of high school myth, you kind of get this negative um, lie about students at community college that, oh, these are the students who didn't try hard enough in high school or they were too lazy to make it to 4 years or what have you. But again, I really want to stress that um, community college students more often than not choose community college for like they have agency and intent and purpose in choosing community college because it serves their goals. Again, it's less time. It is way less money, like a fraction of the cost. And you can walk away with a credential, a certificate, a degree that really positions you well for whatever you want to take on next. So I guess I also want to emphasize how important it is to dispel that myth that, the students that end up in community college had no other choice. Like, no, more and more, especially these days with how expensive everything else is getting, more and more we hear how students are choosing community college with a purpose and a vision and clear goals. So that's also really important to know.
Yeah, and I completely agree because, when a lot of people say that community college is a continuation of high school, what they don't consider is that in high school, you don't get a degree, professional experience, or the connections that you build in community college. So, on that note, do you have any final advice to give community college students to achieve success after they leave college?
Hmm. I think that community college in a lot of ways is way harder to navigate than other types of post-secondary institutions. A lot of students who attend community college are commuter students, which means that they don't live on campus, they commute back and forth. A lot of community college students are part-time, which means they might be juggling family or work obligations outside of school. And so as a result, there are so many resources and supports available at community colleges, but not all students always know what's there, when, for whom, right? So I guess And it's hard to get that information across to all your students when you're a commuter institution and you're serving a lot of part-time students. And so there's not as strong a hub for like student life sometimes. So I guess my advice to community college students would be to ask, like, don't be scared of asking. If anything I've learned from 5 years of qualitative research at community colleges, it's that faculty members, advisors, any student-facing staff, like in the financial aid office, registrar office, enrollment, bursar, there are really good people in all of those offices who are there purely because they are so passionate about serving students in their community. So I think, sometimes it's hard to find the information that you need and the resources you need. So just ask, and every single person you ask becomes part of your network ultimately and part of your community ultimately. So yeah, I think that's the advice I've got.
Yeah, asking and reaching out can never hurt anyone. It will only ever benefit you. So I'm glad that you could speak to that. And I want to thank you for your time today because you provided so much valuable insight on some of these, lesser explored aspects of community college, some of the underappreciated parts of community college.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you so much for your time today. You've really given us so much insight on some of these underappreciated aspects of community college.
It's crazy that there's so many different career paths from a place like this. I mean, we're all in our own individual paths, but it's crazy to imagine that in one building you can find future carpenters, activists, artists, pilots.
Senior marketing strategists.
Yes, those two. You can't forget those.
Yeah, looking back at some of the graduates that came here before us, you'll find some pretty great people with amazing stories, like CCP alum Doneshia Terry, who I had the privilege of speaking with recently.
Yeah, what was it like hearing from somebody who was in your shoes before?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's roll it.
First thing I want to do is just allow you to introduce yourself and give a little bit about your history with the college and a little bit about what you do today. So,
Well, I attended the Community College of Philadelphia. I believe it was back in 2018. And one of the things that I learned about myself while I was there is how much I actually enjoyed being in the classroom and studying. And it actually became kind of foundational for me because I work from home. And 9 times out of 10, I'm either in an independent contractor role or managing different teams or across whatever the case may be. There's a lot of discipline and focus, unfortunately.
mhm.
That has come with that. And honestly, CCP gave me that foundation. With CCP, I actually ended up being on the government association, holding for their marketing chair at that time.
Mhm.
And that's when I really started to discover at that time I was taking psychology. And I started to really understand, like, I don't know, I always thought that marketing was sleazy.
From a marketing strategist.
I always thought it was sleazy, until I actually started transferring some of the things that I was learning in psychology, to marketing, very specifically there at CCP. You, Richard, are a person. I'm a person. And one of my foundational things that I always really enjoyed about CCP is just the liveliness of the campus. I went to the downtown campus, there on Spring Garden Street. And so it was always bustling. There were always people to know or connect or have a passing conversation with. And within those moments, I started to really understand how I tie in. Marketing's not sleazy.
Mhm.
It's just getting to understand the person that's in front of you.
Mhm.
And very specifically, they're on their own journey. And 9 times out of 10, if you understand what their journey is, you can help them achieve whatever it is within their journey.
Mhm.
Um, and so I credit a lot of just what I do now and how I do it to some of those foundational building blocks that I learned back at CCP.
Hmm. Well, I'm glad that we were able to somehow help you in, shaping,
For
your
sure.
perception of your field and how you even understand marketing, going from thinking that it's lazy to understanding how, you're actually understanding people and what you might be able to connect with them in order to maybe sell them something or just, deliver a message because it's really versatile in that way.
It is.
So Yeah, the first thing I actually want to ask is what drove you to CCP in the first place? Because we know that it did have an influence on you, but what made you decide that that was the right decision to begin with?
So at that time in life, I had actually had my son early, my firstborn. My due date and my graduation date were the same exact day. Throughout high school, I took AP classes, gearing up to go to Marist College. It
Mhm.
was a much different journey than the one that was before me on my graduation day. And so I immediately got into the work field, into property management afterwards. And at that time, I had met my now husband in downtown. And I was a little lost in life. Like it was like I was like, there's a lot going on, but I don't feel like I have structure. And so when we were living down in the city, I would occasionally walk and run Spring Garden Street. And I started making connections with people that I would run into, the students at CCP, and they would tell me just their experiences that they were having there. And that really drove me to make the first step with just like stalking CCP
Mhm.
online and figuring out what they offer and what it's all about. And then enrolling later in that next semester in the fall.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know what I was expecting, but that's a very interesting answer that you gave. But it's great that you made those connections even through, just walking down Spring Garden because some of the people that you'll pass down Spring Garden are future lawyers, future doctors,
Sure,
people that could even, help you get into another position that you might not have found if you didn't have these connections. So
exactly.
it's
100%. One of my mentors often tell me that your net worth is in your network, which is
mhm,
another reason why marketing has kind of like been that thing because it forces me to make the connections. I mean, Richard, you were a random guy that sent me a LinkedIn message.
it's
And I'm
true.
well, what's the harm in making the connection? And I think that that's kind of like the difference between where our trajectories are in life, how open
Mhm.
you can be to some of these opportunities that might seem a little random in the moment, but it actually ends up being that next big step that you need it to take in order to accomplish whatever it is that you're desiring.
And even when, like you said, I'm a random guy who sends you a LinkedIn message a few weeks ago, whenever that was. What's the harm for either one of us in
Yeah,
saying, okay, I'll do it, or I'll
yeah,
send it because I could be like, what if she says no? Well, then we don't have this interview, and maybe I'll find another person to interview.
for
But
sure.
putting yourself out there is always one of at least the most important things about being in a space like community college, because otherwise you'll never get that net worth of having a large network. So
Yes.
I actually do
Yes.
like that phrase, and maybe I'll adopt it.
Yeah, yeah.
I also wanted to ask about your decision about going into the marketing industry as well. When did you think you understood that you wanted to be like in marketing? When did you think that you decided to be a marketing strategist?
That is such an interesting question, Richard. I don't think I ever in my life decided to be a marketing strategist.
Hmm.
Um, it kind of goes back to those foundational building blocks. You just take one step at a time and then you look back over of this journey and you're like, oh, wow. It's kind of like that in a sense. So when I was leasing apartments, leasing apartments is something very very interesting. You're helping someone find their next home. It's like their next chapter in life. It's one of the biggest investments or the biggest expense lines in somebody's budget. And so I realized that I liked getting to know people. I liked getting to know strangers. For me, it was less of the transaction of like what apartment I have to sell and more of the here's this person starting this new chapter.
Mhm.
How can I make this easy for them? Because it already comes with a lot. And so when I started going to CCP and the psychology class, started connecting some of those dots in my head with like, oh, that's what I was doing, or that
Mhm.
makes perfect sense now as to like why this works this way or that might think that way. And then a few years later, it's probably like 2 or 3 years later, I had gotten promotions within the property management industry, and where I landed isn't what I desired. And so the progression is being a property manager, and the property manager, they get the opposite of what the people in the leasing department do. They get the bills, the late fees, the evictions, like all that stuff. I was like, oh, that's terrible. So, so my fiance at the time, he's like, you know what? We're gonna start an e-commerce business. And I was like, okay, what's an e-commerce business? And he's like, we're gonna start an e-commerce business selling power banks. And I was like, what is a power bank? Anyway, I won't bore you with the details of what a power bank is, but marketing came in handy for me, and I didn't realize that I was doing marketing when we open the e-commerce business and all this other stuff. But it's essentially trying to become best friends with these very specific people. That's all on this journey. And you never ever get a chance to talk to them outside of these mass communication channels where, like, an email or social media or something along those lines. And so when I started applying some of the things that I learned from CCP and some of the things that I took from leasing, I ended up, we ended up having a pretty successful, Jagotech was the name of the e-commerce business, Amazon bestseller product. And I ended up taking some of those skills and I ended up working for other agencies in order to support their clients with marketing. Richard, I didn't know what I was doing. Don't tell anybody. But but I literally learned every step of the way, and those key building blocks for the discipline that I was telling you about that I had learned from just studying, um, and like being committed to honestly the boring stuff, the stuff that I know I don't want to sit there for hours looking at
Yeah.
flashcards.
Hmm.
I fall asleep at the textbooks, but I don't know. Back then, it was like really important to me to be a 4.0 student. Like, I don't know why, but that was the thing. But with that, all of that nitty-gritty, deep down work, it's all of the soft skills that actually end up making it mean something for the people that I support now. And so now I find myself supporting chief marketing officers at enterprise companies. Not, yes, partly because of my marketing skills, but more so because of the soft skills and the discipline that I've continued to carry with me throughout this journey. I don't know if that answered your question, Richard, but it's been a journey.
Well, I mean, it's usually getting to the final destination isn't like a straight path. It's
Mhm.
a curvy path with a lot of bumps. Like
For
sometimes you don't even know where exactly you're going. You just know maybe I like doing this and I'm pretty good at this. And then you put some of that together and you take some classes, get a degree, and now you figured out where you're gonna go
Yep.
5 years later. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that part.
it makes sense that, it's not a simple this is what I want to do. It's I learned this along the way and I picked up these skills and like you said, I mean, eventually you got to marketing, but not just because you happen to know marketing. You picked up some soft skills along the way that you figured out could be helpful in becoming, a marketing professional. So I think that's great. And final thing I wanted to ask is how do you think that attending community college shaped your career path or prepared you for going into your career, your industry?
Hmm. Um, you know, people nowadays, I hear really often say that the weight of a college degree doesn't have the same weight as it did, whenever the case may be, whatever period that they're comparing to. Um, for me personally, I would still go back to college, even in today's day, because very frankly, of those soft skills that are built, college ends up kind of weeding you out in a way. If you're not ready to be a college student if you're not ready to put in the work to study. Because at this point you're paying for something, right? You're investing in this, you're getting the loan, whatever the case may be. And so you have a little bit more skin in the game. And so if you're not willing to honestly suck up to the things that just straight up suck in college, then it's really, really hard that you're going to be able to see um, the skills that you would need to succeed within, just a really hard life out here, to be honest with you. It's very competitive. You got YouTubers out here making millions of dollars and they've been on for 25 seconds.
Mm.
It's just a different landscape out here. And so for me, very specifically, college was really important for just my discipline and all of the assets that I needed to become an entrepreneur in a way, to kind of own my own destiny, shape the schedule, and all of the glory things that people think is like glorious. But to be really honest with you, Richard, it's not very glamorous. Like I being my own boss means that I have to have the vision and discipline to tell myself no. I have to have the discipline to wake up at 5 a.m. so that I'm prepared for the day. There's still all of those things that if you can't establish that in an environment such as college, it's going to be really hard for you to make it out in the real world.
Mhm. And I'm glad that you spoke to like some of these things, they might not seem worth it. They might seem like they just suck right now, but if you just stick it out long enough, you'll see they have real like material benefits and real material applications in the real world and finding whatever the next opportunity is. And you learn to be disciplined, you learn
Yeah,
work ethic, you learn how to work in teams, you know how to do all of these things, not just because they're important and you took a course somewhere online. No, you're actively building these skills, even if you don't realize it just by attending
sure.
college. So,
For sure. For
so
sure.
yeah,
Even if you don't realize it is an important factor. Looking
mhm.
back on the journey, it's really hard going through the journey in order to realize what is actually happening. It actually looks a bit like a very messy, like nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. But when you look back over it, Richard, like time and time again, it was always like, wow, that one connection I made with Richard led me to X, Y, and Z opportunities. Or that one test that I really needed to get an A on, sure, I didn't retain the information, but these study skills were transferable skills into my research stuff. It's all of the little things that really, truly, absolutely make no sense to us in the moment that we'll tell stories about, hopefully, years
Mhm.
later on an interview.
Yep, just like this right now, because I bet 2 or 3 weeks ago you never saw yourself right here.
No, definitely not, Richard.
So it's
Awesome.
happening in real time. What we're saying is happening in real time.
Yes.
So I want to thank you so much for volunteering for this relatively short little conversation that we had here today.
Okay.
But yes, thank you for responding in the first place. And I'm glad that we were able to have this very valuable discussion. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Richard. All the best of luck to you, CCP, and the 17th take. Looking forward to seeing what's to come. I'll be sure to stay tuned.
That's a nice wrap up for our discussion today. I hope we gave you a new appreciation for community college, whether you're a current student, an alum, or someone considering whether or not to take the leap. Thanks for tuning into the 17th Take. We hope that today's conversation made you think, smile, or at least see Philly from a new angle. If you like what you heard, make sure to follow us, share, and keep the conversation going. Until next time, I'm Richard Robinson with the Community College of Philadelphia's Communication and Media Studies program, and this has been the 17th Take, where conversation meets perspective and awareness meets action. So